All right, guys, it's time. I've been putting it off for much too long. This 1996 Liberty Elegant Lady needs some love and attention, and we're gonna start with new batteries. And if you remember correctly, we're gonna be going with a Vatrer lithium iron phosphate 24-volt batteries. And yes, we're doing 4 of them. Now, why are we doing 4 of them? Well, when we talk about motorhomes built on a bus chassis, the house battery location chosen by the converter, in this case it was Liberty Coach, is going to be very difficult to relocate positions of the house batteries very easily, especially because the chassis voltage on a commercial bus like this is actually 24 volts a DC. So for me, it was just an awful lot easier to maximize power density and storage by utilizing the factory installed battery trays from Liberty, and in that case they used Group 8D house batteries, which end up looking like these behemoths right here. And these trays and this location was already set up for 2 8D group batteries on top and then 2 more on the bottom. Pay no attention to these Group 24 deep cycle batteries that are here in place, because that's why we're doing a battery replacement. When I picked up the bus in Kentucky, the 4 8D AGM batteries that were in there were split. The electrolyte was leaking out of them and they were dead as can be, so these were just a temporary solution so I could drive down the road. So to say these batteries are unbecoming of a Liberty Elegant Lady would be a wild understatement, but thankfully, because Vatrer does make lithium iron phosphate batteries in about the same size as an 8D battery, that's why I chose to go with 4 of them. Even though Vatrer does have much different group size batteries available, including the steel case batteries that I used on my previous motorhome, my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder. But the dimensions of that battery were not going to work out in this setup. Ooh. But why did I go with Vatrer? Well, it's pretty easy. I installed a Vatrer battery on my RV, and I've installed them on a number of customers' RVs, and I've never had any complaints or concerns about the installation. Everybody's been very pleased with the battery performance, so that goes a long way for me to recommend a battery manufacturer. Now, I don't tear apart batteries on my channel, but I have followed a number of creators that do tear apart Vatrer batteries, and they have said the BMS and the cells that they use and the construction methods are very impressive and high quality. I've also followed a number of different creators, including Megawatt or Dr. Megawatt, I believe on YouTube and TikTok, who put a great big huge Vatrer battery bank in their motorhome. He did a stress test on those and found out those were operating almost flawlessly after all these years that he's had them installed. And more importantly, I haven't heard anything about this red plastic epoxy discoloring or the terminals becoming quite loose, which is great for Vatrer. But why did I choose lithium iron phosphate batteries instead of the original AGM lead acid batteries? There's lots of reasons, most notably lead acid batteries are made with lead. This one battery is 101 pounds or 46 kilograms. While this Vatrer lithium iron phosphate battery sits a little bit lighter at 77 pounds or 35 kilograms. Now with the Prevost bus this massive, that's weighing in about 50,000 pounds, saving a few 100 pounds isn't that big of a deal. But as a technician or owner that's going to be trying to wrestle batteries into this top tray, I can assure you that getting those AGM batteries that were in there out of this thing took me 2 men and a heck of a lot of frustration. So I'm going to look forward to the weight savings just for that fact alone. Now, the second obvious answer from switching to lead acid to the Vatrer lithium iron phosphate batteries like this is going to be maintenance. You don't have to do any maintenance on the chemistry of this battery. Like I said, when I got this Liberty in Kentucky, the house batteries, even though they were maintenance-free AGMs, the battery case was split and it was leaking electrolyte and they were stone dead. And if you're to go to normal lead acid batteries, you will have to go ahead and check your water level, your electrolyte level very routinely, and then you do have to worry about corrosion on the terminals, the connections, and the battery tray. Which for those 2 reasons by themselves, with the weight savings and the lack of maintenance or corrosion that you have to worry about with these batteries, should be reason enough to go ahead and purchase them. Now I think as of this video, these batteries are going for about $8.99 a piece, which might seem a little bit high, but remember just a few months ago, I did replace 6 AGM house batteries on a country coach bus, and we went with the Renogy batteries because the lifelines by themselves were north of $700 a piece. So this is almost on parity with the Lifeline AGM lead acid batteries. Now, while admittedly those Renogy batteries were considerably cheaper, I think about $400 a piece, and were rated at 200 amp hours. Remember, this is 200 amp hours at 25 or 24 volt. So we're really not comparing apples to apples. Remember, to get the actual true power capacity, we need to do 200 amp hours times 25.6. That gives us a 5,120 watt hour capability, whereas with those AGMs from Renogy, 200 amp hours times, let's be generous and say 12.8, just a little over 2,500 watt hours. And the problem with AGMs, which are lead acid batteries, even though those AGMs are deep cycle batteries, you should never routinely deplete them below 50% of their reserve capacity. So out of 2,500 watt hours, you should really never go below, but a little over 1,200 watt hours, right? So almost 1,300 watt hours. So this, you get just over 5,100 watt hours. With the AGM, the 200 amps from Renogy, you're looking at about 1,300 watt hours for basically the same footprint and size. Because the BMS of this battery will let you utilize almost 100% of this 200 amp hour, maybe even a little bit more. I haven't done all the testing, but I know a lot of the creators out there that have done the testing. And I have watched their videos, and it does look like the rating is at parity or a little bit below what they're actually getting for amp hour ratings. And that's probably even the best reason so far to switch from lead acid to lithium iron phosphate like this, is because basically what we discovered is that this one battery has about the same capacity as 3 of the 200 amp hour Renogy batteries. And I think even the Lifeline AGM 8D batteries are about 250 amp hours. Let me check real fast. I do stand corrected. It's 255 amp hours. But even right there, they're the same price as these batteries right here. Now, if you're asking me why I went with individual 24 volt batteries instead of wiring up 2 12 volt batteries in series to make 24 volt, because they do sell these very similar size batteries as 12 volt batteries, it's because I wanted to maximize power density. If we wire up 2 12 volt batteries in series, we double the voltage, but the amp rating does stay the same. So if we had 2 12 volt 200 amp hour Vatrer batteries, we would still, and wired those in series, we would still only have 1 200 amp hour 24 volt battery. So I felt this was going to be the best way to maximize power density in this small compartment right here. I felt that was going to be the best choice. Even though it does cause a little bit of concern when it comes to wiring up the 24 volt batteries all together to make one battery bank. When I was at rvmax.us in Greenville, South Carolina, changing out the 6 AGM batteries with 6 Renogy AGM batteries, the most common question I got from that video is, why did you go with lead acid again and AGM batteries and not upgrade to lithium batteries? Well, the thing about it is, it does get a little bit complicated, and I don't want to be dishonest, because with these buses on a 24 volt chassis, there's more to just switching out batteries. So while power density might be one of the reasons why I went with 25 or 24 volt batteries from Vatrer, the ease of integrating 24 volt batteries into the bus chassis seemed a lot easier to me. It does get a little bit complicated if you look at the wiring on these, because these are both in series and in parallel, because we do have both a 12 volt system and a 24 volt system. And we can't do that very effectively with lithium iron phosphate batteries. On lead acid, you can kind of get away with it. They do have a battery balancer right here to make sure that the 4 individual batteries stay in balance off the 12 volt tap. Speaking to the engineers at Vatrer, they did not recommend wiring it up the same way, with having 4 12 volt batteries in a series and parallel configuration, having a 12 volt tap off of that. So the 24 volt batteries that I'm going to be using seem to make everything a lot easier. And it has a built-in redundancy, so if one of the batteries did go bad, I would still have 3 good 24 volt batteries. I could just remove one of them out of the system. Whereas if I have 4 12 volt batteries wired in series and in parallel, if I lose one battery, basically I'm down to 2 batteries, but it's really just one 24 volt battery. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but Let me show you something. When you go to the manual that does come with each one of the batteries, and you go right here, you can see you can wire up the batteries in series. So these 24-volt batteries could be made into one 48-volt battery. Or you can go ahead and wire them up in parallel like this using bus bars. And if you've noticed, directly over here to the right, I do have some pretty oversized and dramatic bus bars to connect all the batteries up to. Now I did oversize these because I do want to make sure that they can handle the maximum amount of amperage that these batteries can put out. So these bus bars are rated about 600 amps of continuous use at 48 volts. Because these batteries do have a maximum charge and discharge of continuous current of 200 amps a piece, and we have 4 of them in parallel, we could have 200 amps coming off of each one of the 4 batteries. So I mean to make sure the bus bar can handle that load, even though the overcurrent protection is going to be maxed out about 200 amps maximum, which I have no doubts this can handle. One thing you might also want to recognize is that they do recommend that all the leads coming from the batteries are going to be the same length to the bus bar from the batteries. So that way we keep all the batteries in optimal balance, because the leads won't be any difference in length, because that can affect resistance of the cables of the conductor itself. Now, speaking about performances, if we look right here at the product page, it does recommend a charge voltage between 28.4 and 29.2 to get a full charge and balance to each individual cells within the battery itself. But again, one of the greatest reasons about lithium iron phosphate, which apparently there are a lot of greatest reasons, on lead acid batteries, if you were to completely discharge these batteries, not only are you risking damaging the actual lead plates on the batteries, but it will take a day or 2 to fully recharge these batteries, because the chemistry which makes a lead acid battery is fairly inefficient. Whereas with this, if you do have a battery charger that can put out 100 amps, it would only take 2 hours to completely recharge the battery. But of course, if you have a 200 amp battery charge, you can get it charged up fully in an hour. Now, in fairness, with 4 batteries, even with a 200 amp hour charger on there, it will still take, what, 4 hours? Math is somewhere around there, so 4 or 5 hours to get a lot of battery capacity put back up again, because we have 4 5100 watt hours of power available to us. So that's 20 kilowatt hours of battery power being charged back up again in 4 or 5 hours, which is pretty impressive, and a lot better than Liberty Bus would have ever thought that we'd get, or that this elegant lady would ever see, let alone be able to fit in that small little battery compartment right there. Now, speaking of this battery compartment right here, that gets me to the 3 most common reasons why people don't want to switch from lead acid to lithium iron phosphate. And I don't know if you can see with this battery compartment right here. If we look past there, that's the transmission, and that's exposed to the outside. And it's also in a stainless steel metal box. And temperature considerations are something that people will throw at me when we talk about lithium iron phosphate batteries. Yeah, they don't want to get too hot, which I think is about 60 degrees Celsius, but really their performance can be affected, and the cell chemistry can be damaged if it does get too cold. Most modern lithium iron phosphate batteries, like this one right here, does have a smart BMS built into it, which is a smart microprocessor on a board that is connected to each individual one of the cells to keep all the cells in voltage balance. And if the battery starts to get too cold, which means at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the BMS shuts off charging, so it won't try to charge the battery at that temperature. If it gets colder, I think negative 20 degrees Celsius, which is about negative 5 degrees Fahrenheit, it will shut off discharging too. But just like the last Vatrer battery I installed, this does have self-heating on it, and I didn't explain that feature at all, which I didn't understand too much either, and I got a little bit of pushback in the comment section, and I'll try to explain it a little bit better now. Not are there individual lithium iron phosphate cells within this plastic case, and a smart BMS, and temperature sensors, and a lot of wiring and bus bars, but there's also going to be a heater, or a heater pad, to keep the cells from freezing or to keep them from getting too cold. And while yes, that heater does get power from the individual cells in the battery itself, it won't turn on unless it is being charged. So if we go to the owner's manual right here, it will explain how the heater is going to work. The BMS will turn on the heating function automatically inside when the temperature is lower than 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. So it needs to see charging current coming to the battery from the exterior side. It won't automatically turn on the battery heater if we're not hooked up to a charger. So those that were in my comments talking about how the battery heater doesn't work unless it's hooked up to a battery charger, you are correct. I was wrong. It is built into this, but you do need to see charging coming in for that heater to work. And I also won't deny that because of the battery location right here, 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit is not an unheard of or unreasonable temperature for this compartment to get down to in any situation, even including Phoenix, Arizona during the winter. So having that feature will be pretty nice. The second most common complaint I get from people about switching from lead acid batteries to lithium iron phosphate batteries, that they say, well, you know, these lithium ion batteries, they're prone to self-ignition and fire. But the chemistry of lithium iron phosphate is such that really this plastic case is the most flammable part of the battery. I'm not a chemist or a battery engineer. My understanding is that the chemistry of lithium ion batteries, which is much different than the lithium iron phosphate battery, is such that the lithium iron phosphate batteries cannot sustain fire. If anything, they would put a fire out. Iron isn't commonly used in a lot of handheld lithium battery packs because it is heavy, but on a 50,000 pound bus like this, or even a camper trailer, we don't have to worry about the little bit of extra weight that the lithium iron phosphate chemistry is going to add. So this chemistry is very, very stable. You don't have to worry about fires, which I know is a very common concern a lot of people have. But these are not lithium ion batteries that you might be aware of, like on laptops, tablets, or even phones, that are a little bit more prone to more explosive reactions. So you don't have to worry about thermal runaways, what I'm saying. The third and most common complaint I'm going to get about switching from lead acid to lithium iron phosphate is going to be charging. And I know I've put out a video that says you don't really have to worry about chargers. Most of these modern lithium iron phosphate batteries can handle any sort of charge coming to it. And while technically I stand by that, it is true, most non-lithium chargers are not going to get the higher voltages necessary to completely balance out the individual cells inside the battery. Maybe you get 80% of charge, which I know some people are going to be concerned that, well, if you don't get the full charge, you can't balance out the cells, you can cause damage to the batteries. But it's not really something where you need to worry about these, because I think these have 5,000 cycles available. I'll put the actual true number right there. You're not going to be causing a lot of damage. In fact, a lot of people want to keep their batteries at 80%. However, this is a 1996 Liberty, and the onboard inverter chargers that it came with are at the end of their life, and it would be best if we could get much better inverters in here so that we can make sure that we are charging the batteries correctly, because these are not going to do very well, especially this one. So I will concede to some of those people in my comments on some of my other videos that we do want to make sure we have a lithium compatible charger with the Multi+ 2 is going to be compatible with. While it may not be 100% necessary, I will call it, in this case, best practices for sure. Especially when we're talking about protecting the investment of these 4 Vatrer lithium iron phosphate batteries. We want to make sure we're getting the most performance we can out of these. Otherwise, the battery does ship with your warranty registration card, your terminal bolts, and a couple fun stickers you can use. Now, the first Vatrer battery that I did use, they did not have a dedicated Vatrer app that I did complain about, because the one that they were having me use was very clunky for sure, but they really did improve, and they created their own app, which you can find in the iOS Apple Store or the Android Google Play Store, because this does have Bluetooth connectivity built into it, which really does help out when you're just trying to find out what your battery capacity is, how long you can run, what its currently state of charge is, if it's charging or discharging. It's a great app. I've really been quite impressed with the whole thing. It's even pretty slick looking. Now, having said all that, I do want to concede to a couple other commenters who have told me they've installed these batteries and been very pleased with it. But there is a QR code right here. You want to make sure that you scan this before you install the batteries, because once you get the batteries installed, it's going to be very difficult to find that QR code or the serial number for the battery. You might have to take everything out again just to scan that. So before you put the batteries in, do download the app and then go ahead and open up the app. And what you're going to want to do is you can go to the dashboard right there. You can see the actual stated charge of the battery. It is shipped at 49%, and you can see the rest of it right here down to the individual cells down below. Now, that's the first real free advice I can give you, is to make sure that you are doing all the connections before you install the batteries. The second one, I'm not really sure I'm supposed to tell you about this, but I did speak to the engineers at Vatrer, and they told me, because when I go to the charge MOS and discharge MOS, I assume that's the MOSFETs, it looks like they're switches, but they don't do anything. However, if you push and hold the switch right there, it'll say, please input password. The secret code is 666000. And now you can actually turn that one off. It's the exact same thing for the discharge, so it turns back on again. The other thing I think everybody wants to know is, what's the range on this? Well, let's go ahead and walk away as far as I can, and we'll see if we can't effectively find the range. Let's see if we still have communication right here. Looks like we do. If I go back to Bluetooth connectivity, dashboard, let's see if I can push and hold that. And it did turn off. So I'm going to say that's well in excess of 80 feet, because that's about 2 bus lengths. So I think that's more than enough when we're talking about Bluetooth connectivity, which is another thing that they did improve from the first Vatrer battery. I did complain about that too. Now, one more bonus thing I like about these Vatrer batteries is the way that they are shipped. They come with these wonderful foam isolators, and I found these are such a great knee pad. I don't throw them away, especially in my rocky area right here. I use these when I'm working in the rocks. Now, I will likely have some sort of a discount code for these Vatrer batteries in the description down below if you are interested in them. I think you can get the 12 volt just fine too. You don't have to go with 24 volt, and they have a lot of different styles. So far, I've been really pleased with their performance and their, I guess, technical support and responding to me when I have questions. I don't know that I was supposed to show you guys that special code or how to do that, but I think it's going to be very useful in the future, especially when you're hooking these up into big, metal boxes, making sure that you can turn the charge and discharge circuits on, I guess is the best way to put it. I hope that helps, guys. I'm really excited to share the upgrades on this 1996 Liberty Elegant Lady. Hopefully the next video will be showing putting these batteries in and their performance of it. It's going to be a little bit longer, more in-depth video. Definitely not something that we need to cover in this video right now. I'm just showing you why we went with the Vatrer and the battery size and the good reasons for doing it, as well as the feedback from other people who have installed these batteries. Based on some of the videos I've done, I haven't gotten any negative feedback, so that's always reassuring to me, because I don't want anybody to waste their hard-earned money or be upset with buying a product that did not meet expectations or failed, or in other words, left you stranded. Because when I was in the video that I made, when I was at rvmax.us in South Carolina, when I was at rvmax.us and the 8G, the 8D, AGM, deep cycle. But why did I choose a lithium iron phosphate battery rather than the original AGM lead? Now like I said, when I got this coach here, and because the BMS system on this will let you utilize almost 100% of the reserve capacity, because the BMS of the lithium iron phosphate. Now, if you're asking me why did I go with 24 volt batteries instead of now if you're asking me why I went with 24 volt batteries instead of now if you're asking me why I went with 24 volt batteries, which is a computer control board, which is a computer which is a smart computer